You can best tell a town by its saloon. Ouch, a nasty one. Good for me, bad for them.
Howdy, sweetie. I'm Sheriff Evans. Welcome to Rockton Point.
The name's Cindy. Just Cindy.
Pinball FX, Wild West Rampage. Hello, I am the many-talented Mr. Jefferson, and this is part 2 of my 4-part Pinball FX series, The Free Ones. The first review was The Sorcerer's Lair. The next will be about fishtails, and the final free table is on Pinball M, and it's called Wrath of the Elder Gods, the Director's Cut. Wrath of the Elder Gods is a table over on Pinball FX, but that version is not free, and we're not here to talk about the tables that aren't free. No, today we're here to talk about the gunslinging, fast-shooting Wild West Rampage. I really like this theme. I enjoy humorous Wild West movies like Maverick and Support Your Local Gunfighter, both of which feature James Gardner, and both of which I highly suggest watching. This table also reminds me a lot of a 50s Roger Corman western called Gunslinger, which had a female sheriff and ended with literally every single other character dead.
Well, now she's the sheriff of herself.
Yeah, well, at least the horses are cheap now.
And the lead gunslinger handing off her badge to the new sheriff without ever mentioning that there were just corpses literally everywhere around town and there wasn't a living soul left to police.
New marshal gets here. Give him this.
We don't need a marshal, there's no people!
I don't suggest watching that movie, but I will provide a link to the Mystery Science Theater 3000 version of it on YouTube, which is at least bearable.
Everybody!
We're all dead.
Oh, that's right.
Wild West Rampage is the story of Cindy, an accomplished bounty hunter who has just arrived in the town of Rockton Point on the tail of a gang targeting the local miners in exchange for a stake in the mine. As soon as she steps off the Iron Horse, Cindy notices a rough-looking gentleman with a 6-shooter on his hip and a bronze star on his chest, who seems to be sizing her up. As she approached the man, he introduced himself as Sheriff Evans and welcomed her to Rockton Point while gently brushing his hand over the hilt of the iron on his hip. Cindy noted the subtle threat and curtly replied with her name before heading off to the mine. But no sooner had she arrived than an ambush began. Cindy stood her ground, running off the bandits while thinking how suspicious their swift arrival was. The next day, Cindy headed straight to the local saloon looking for answers and to see how rough the local element was, and she was not disappointed, spying some of the same bandits she had run off the night before, and sitting right there in the corner of the same saloon was the sheriff, who had not protected the miners the day before. One of the bandits recognizes Cindy and his friends encircle her, looking for a fight. The sheriff, still sitting in his corner sipping his whiskey, not looking up and certainly not interfering. Now, Cindy had the misfortune of growing up in a town where the boys don't shy away from hitting a lady, and now the bandits had the misfortune of ganging up on a lady who learned how to land a clean uppercut. Cindy managed to drag the fight outside where she knocked out the bandits one by one, and only when the fight was over did Sheriff Evans intercede. He sent the bandits off to the drunk take and warned Cindy he would have to lock her up if she happened to start another fight in his town. Being the bounty hunter that she was, Cindy recognized when the law led the lawless, and headed back to get some more information about Sheriff Evans from the miners who owed her a favor. She learned that Sheriff Evans locked up anyone who crossed him and set loose every low-life criminal who agreed to work under him, and the outlaws had began to outnumber the good citizens in this frontier town ever since they struck gold. Evans' gang had grown too large for even a sharpshooter like Cindy to handle, so she decided she needs reinforcements and staged a daring nighttime raid to rescue the sheriff's prisoners. As the prisoners escaped, the sheriff chased down Cindy, cornering her in the local ravine where Evans and Cindy took the opportunity to trade insults with each other while each of them was seeking the upper hand. The sheriff had dropped his gun in the chase, but the horse he rode had a saddlebag filled with dynamite, and Cindy took the time to reload her 6-shooter. Evans lit the fuses and threw the explosives at Cindy, who shot all 5 sticks out of the air. The sheriff retreated before she could put the 6th bullet in his chest. Cindy returns to the mines and the former prisoners tell her the sheriff's gang is planning to rob the train and stagecoach shipping the gold out of town. Realizing her share of the profits are at stake, she rides off first through the ravine lined with barrels of explosives. She spied the lit fuses and severed them with a couple of well-aimed shots, allowing the stagecoach to pass without stopping or being waylaid. And Cindy rode hard on ahead to board the moving train, fighting her way from boxcar to boxcar, fighting off the robbers and defeating the gang before they could take over the train. Cindy captures Rattlesnake Dan, who taunts her as he lays hogtied, telling her that the next train coming into town will contain an army of desperados from Sheriff Evans' former gang, who are going to destroy the town and finally take over the mines, and there is nothing she could do to stop them. But old Dan didn't count on the fact that Cindy had quick wits, and more importantly, she had access to a whole mess of explosives from that failed stagecoach robbery. So just after saving one train, Cindy raced to blow up another. She placed the explosives at the base of the bridge, and with precision timing and a crack shot, Sheriff Evans' gang was never going to see the town. But the town surely saw the explosion that ended the siege before it began. And if they didn't hear the barrels destroying the bridge, there was absolutely no ignoring the sound as the Iron Horse's boiler exploded as tons of speeding steel crashed thunderously into the wall of the ravine. Every soul who heard the explosion evacuated the town, holing up in the mines fortified and protected by the sheriff's former prisoners. Cindy reloaded her gun and headed towards the nearly abandoned town to end it once and for all. All that was left was the sheriff and a handful of his men who hid around the town and gathered around the saloon to ambush her as she approached. Now, besides her impeccable aim, Cindy is known for 2 things: her quick wit and her slow temper. And Sheriff Evans had lit the fuse on that temper the moment she stepped off the Iron Horse. And on her way to her showdown, she noticed a flash of light reflecting off of Meadow Lane on the side of the road. There, lying in the dirt, was Evans' lost 6-shooter. Cindy picked it up and opened the cylinder, and as she loaded each bullet into the chamber, she thought of her encounters with the man. And after flicking the cylinder back into place, she descended on the saloon, a gun in each hand, and as she gunned down the last of the bandits in an unstoppable rampage, the last of Evans' men broke rank, and one by one she chased down and cornered the remaining men, and one by one she proved she was the quicker draw as she faced each man in a duel to the death as she cornered them. Cindy continued moving towards the jailhouse where Sheriff Evans would make his final stand, the bounty hunter and the sheriff squaring off in one final quick draw in the center of town. Evans moved first, grabbing the hilt of his pistol and aiming it squarely at Cindy, who in one swift motion drew and fired her big iron, ripping the sheriff's new pistol from his hands. Cindy wasn't sure what was going to pay better, her share of the gold or all of the bounty she was going to collect from a train full of bandits who were wanted dead or alive laying at the bottom of the ravine, or the bounty on the corrupt lawman who led them all. But what she did know was the showdown in Racton Point was finally over. She had to wait to collect on her bounties on account of the fact that she just hogtied the last sheriff and a new one had yet to arrive. To pass the time, Cindy would sit in the saloon telling tales of her early days, when she learned how to fight growing up, or she would spin a story about one of her old bounties, or show off her shooting skills by knocking down 7 cans with 6 bullets. And while she sat there drinking and swapping stories with the locals, she decided she had made enough money finally, and it was time to give up the bounty hunter life and settle down. She also decided that Sheriff Cindy sounded a whole lot better than Sheriff Evans, and besides that, she didn't reckon anyone left living in Racton would dare run against her. Besides, it was about time for a woman to finally wear a badge, but she didn't fancy the corrupt sheriff's old tarnished bronze star, no. She had a new badge commissioned, one forged of gold, which is how she went from being called just Cindy to being known as Golden Cindy the Lone Star. Now, that's the story of the table, or at least that's how I tell it, with a little embellishment to try to create a timeline of events out of the various modes and side missions presented on the table, which I managed to turn into a narrative because this table contains enough story elements to piece together into a compelling story. I don't know if Cindy would have gone on to become the new sheriff, but that's the pretty logical next step in this series of events, and it's a much happier ending than most westerns get.
My name is Sam Bass. You tell me where I might find the marshal's office.
It's right down there.
Third body on the left.
It's like a nice, quiet little town you've got here.
Dead quiet.
Yeah.
Except for all the bodies.
Sharpshooter was not a good movie, but it was one of the few good female leading roles available in the 50s, which is why the lead actress remembered that terrible shoot so fondly. Much better old Western comedies are Support Your Local Sheriff and Support Your Local Gunslinger, which both largely have the exact same cast and mostly even have the same plot, but with Support Your Local Gunslinger being the better of the two movies and containing many story elements that are present in Wild West Rampage. Now that I've told you the tale of the table, it's time to look at the table itself. I like to start at the bottom of the table because that's where the players are going to look first. The flipper layout is pretty standard. There are 5 lanes and 2 slingshots above them. There are 2 ramps that drop the ball into the rollovers, making it pretty easy to spell out Cindy, which activates the targets below the train cross ramps, and hitting those twice will increase the bonus multiplier. On the left side of the table, just above the left lanes, there is a flipper, and directly across on the right side of the table, there is the jail. Hitting the jail will spell jail and will reveal a sinkhole. Hitting that sinkhole will start the jailbreak mode, where Cindy needs to knock down a pop-up target and then hit the ramp behind that pop-up target and repeat that 3 times for the lit lanes, and freeing all of the prisoners without alerting the other guards will award another bonus. Above the jail sinkhole is a captive ball. Hitting the captive ball hard enough 4 times will release the captive ball for a 2-ball multi-ball, where you will shoot at lit lanes for jackpots. Back over on the opposite side of the table, we have 3 bumpers, 2 targets, and 2 sinkholes, and the left outer orbit. There is a lot happening in this corner, and we're going to start with the sinkholes. The left sinkhole is the dual sinkhole, and the right is the Rampage sinkhole. The dual sinkhole is actually what is known as a vertical upper kicker, and that's because it will kick the ball straight up into the ramp above the hole and drop it out above the nearby left flipper. These sinkholes are also known as the kick and back sinkholes, which are used to activate kickback when all 5 yellow posts are lit. To the left and above the Rampage sinkhole are 2 targets. Hit these twice when Cindy is lit for a bonus multiplier. Getting a 10 times bonus multiplier and completing the multiplier shots again will award an extra ball. The 3 wagon wheel bumpers can be hit 30 times to open access to the Train Trouble mini table, which can be entered by hitting the train ramp just above the bumpers. Between the bumpers is the bridge orbit. Lighting up bridge will start a 30-second timer where you will need to collect 3 stacks of dynamite placed randomly around the table, and then detonate them by shooting the Rampage sinkhole, blowing up the bridge. Across the playfield, above the captured ball target, is a flipper, which can be used to hit the targets on the side of the bumper or to send the ball across the train ramp above the targets. Spelling train will access the train robbery mini table, which can be started by shooting the train ramp again. Just above the train ramp is the mine ramp, which is also accessible using the upper right flipper, and will lead to a habit trail which will drop the ball above the upper left flipper. Spelling Mine starts the Golden Pact mode, where you have 45 seconds to hit 10 bandit drop targets. Hitting a bandit adds 5 seconds to the timer. Above and to the right of the mine ramp is the badge spinner and sinkhole. Spinning the badge 10 times will light up the dual sinkhole. Hitting the dual sinkhole will light up the train cross ramp and the right ramp, and hitting either of those lit lanes will send the ball to a magnet lock above the right flipper. And after a 4-second countdown, you will have to shoot a pop-up target in front of a random location on the left side of the table. If you lose the duel sinkhole will light up again until you beat the duel. Landing the ball in the spinner badge sinkhole will send it over above the upper right flipper, allowing shots at the cross lanes. In the center of the table is the saloon, with its double swinging doors and a ramp that says Saloon and Rampage. The saloon will divert the ball into different habit trails on the left side of the table depending on which word is active. To the right of the saloon ramp is the barrel sinkhole. The barrel sinkhole will change which word is active, Saloon or Rampage, and change the saloon redirect between the two habit trails, dropping the ball over either of the right flippers. Spelling Saloon will begin the Saloon Scuffle Hurry Up mode, where you have 45 seconds to shoot 10 bandit drop targets, with each target adding 5 seconds to the timer. Lighting up Rampage will raise the revolver chamber ball lock below the saloon ramp. You have to lock at least 2 balls within 30 seconds to start the mode, and can lock up to 6 balls after the balls are locked. And after the balls are locked, the revolver is lowered and the Rampage sinkhole is lit. Hitting the Rampage sinkhole will start up to a 6-ball multi-ball mode, with jackpot lanes lighting up throughout the mode, changing every couple of seconds or when the lane is hit twice in a row. Locked balls are stored between Rampage attempts. Hitting the barrel sinkhole 5 times will begin the short fuse mode, where you have to hit 7 barrel targets appearing in the various lanes within 30 seconds, with each barrel hit adding 5 seconds to the timer. To the right of the barrel sinkhole is the wanted ramp, which leads down to the bottom right flipper, and spelling out wanted starts the wanted hurry up mode, where you have 30 seconds to shoot the lit lanes and chase down the fugitive, with each successful shot resetting the timer. After hitting all 4 ramps, Cindy can hit the wanted ramp to kill the fugitive, or the train ramp to capture him alive for a better reward. To the right of the wanted ramp is the Kaboom inner orbit, which connects to the bridge orbit. Spelling Kaboom starts the Kaboom mode, where you have 10 seconds to shoot the specific lit lane, and the sheriff will throw a total of 5 sticks of dynamite if you keep making successful shots. To the right of the Kaboom inner orbit is the Taunt outer orbit and the Poker spinner. Lighting up the taunt will start the taunt mode, where you have 30 seconds to shoot specific lit targets, with each successful shot resetting the timer. There are 5 yellow post targets in front of these lanes, which are used along with the kick and back sinkholes to activate kickback. All of the lanes have an additional icon below them, which can be switched between fist and gun using the star spinner. Lighting all of the fist icons will start the early days hurry up mode, where you will have to shoot 7 enemy drop targets in 30 seconds with a dwindling reward pool. Lighting up all of the gun ramps starts the shooting practice mode, where you have to shoot 7 cans and bottles placed randomly throughout the table. There is also a counter to keep track of how many fists and guns you have collected right next to the plunger. The wizard mode will begin once all 6 missions have been started. Extra ball will light and the final battle begins. The first phase is untimed and lasts until it has been won. Both chances have been used up or the ball drains. The player must shoot the train cross ramps, which will send the ball to the leftmost in lane to start a showdown with a 4-second ball hold, and then they must shoot one of the 3 possible lanes on the right of the table. If successful, Cindy shoots the gun out of Sheriff Evans' hand, and a victory multi-ball will begin. If the player misses twice, however, the wizard mode ends and must be started over by starting all 6 missions over again. And that leads us to the final part of this table, and the first thing you will do, which is a skill shot. There are 3 skill shots available. Launching the ball with enough force to send it up the train ramp will light the wanted and taunt lanes. The wanted lane is the skill shot lane, and the taunt lane rewards a super skill shot, and the third and final skill shot is the hidden skill shot, which can be achieved by launching the ball partway up the train ramp so it rolls back down into the jail sinkhole, which will reward the least amount of points, but it is easier than making either of the other 2 shots. Wild West Rampage may be the hardest of the free tables with a ton of targets to shoot for, and it's very deliberate shots that reward good aim, which is absolutely perfect for the theme of the table. I love the quick draws and all of the pop-up targets, and the Iron Horse is a really cool decoration that is functionally part of the table because it houses the mini tables. The music on the table is absolutely perfect. It's an electric western theme, and all of Cindy's voice lines with her cheerful Texas accent are a really big highlight of the table. Cindy is a really fun character who reminds me a lot of Helen Chappell, the fiery Texas blonde who ran the lunch counter in the sitcom Wings. And if you're too young to remember that show, just think of it as a prequel to Spider-Man 3, aka the one with the emo Dancing Peter meme, because the Sandman was in it. Wild West Rampage is a great example of how a pinball table can tell a complex and complete story with its theme. I took the elements of the story the table tells and put the events into the most reasonable timeline I could come up with to tell a complete story from start to finish with limited embellishment. In my version, Cindy shoots the fuses to the barrels during the stagecoach robbery instead of blowing them up like she does on the table, because they were just a really handy explanation for where she got the explosives to destroy the bridge later on. So she blew up the barrels, but just later in the story in my version. There isn't any indication on the table that Cindy was going to become the new sheriff either, but it is, again, a very logical conclusion given that she single-handedly wiped out the former law enforcement and criminal element at the same time who had taken over the town. And now she also has a stake in the local gold mine to look after because of the Golden Pact event, and would want to stick around and protect her interests, which should also provide her with plenty of action as word of the gold mine spreads and attracts more bandits looking to score big. This is an absolutely fantastic free table, and it is a great table for new players to practice their aim so they can become a quick draw like Cindy. There is a lot happening on this table, but it's not confusing or overwhelming, and the yellow and tans of the Southwestern design artwork make it really easy to track the ball. Even though there is a nice wide open midfield, it doesn't actually feel empty due to the table's layout. That is the free Wild West Rampage table for Pinball FX. This is part of the series I call the Free Ones, which will include reviews for Fishtails, The Sorcerer's Lair, and Wrath of the Elder Gods. Director's Cut on Pinball M. It was really interesting writing the story of this table, and I don't believe I have seen any other pinball content summarize the story of the tables before. I believe telling the story of the table will help new players understand the table better, because when put into the context of a story, the goals of the table and the table mechanics should be easier to understand for new players to see as story elements instead of just, flippers and ramps and bumpers. And since the main goal of my videos is to explain pinball mechanics to people who don't have any experience playing pinball, I felt this was the best approach. I believe it also makes my table reviews a little more interesting for seasoned players who already know what every bumper and target does, and just likes watching videos with people talking about pinball. I'm probably not going to be able to show those guys anything new, but hopefully they enjoyed the narration. I am the many talented Mr. Jefferson, and I would like to thank my viewers, my subscribers, my channel members, and those of you who hit the thumbs up button. An extra special thanks to those of you who have gone the extra mile in sponsoring my channel recently. It is because of you that I have all 120 tables currently in Pinball FX. I also want to give a special thanks to NClearBlack for playing these tables on his Twitch channel, so I could get some clips of the harder shots and wizard modes. Links to his channel below. I'll be back with another video game or pinball table review soon, but until then, toodles.
Oh boy, that was a turd, wasn't it?